You stole my wife, my business, my life. Now I take it all back.
The text message that destroyed my life arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was explaining to a client why his electrical bill would cost more than his mortgage payment. Graham, having the most amazing time in Miami. Girls' weekend is exactly what I needed. Love you. Beth's message glowed on my phone screen, complete with a heart emoji that now felt like a dagger. Funny thing about that message. My wife Beth had supposedly left for Miami 3 days ago with her girlfriends Lisa and Carmen for some spa retreat nonsense. What she didn't know was that I'd gotten a credit card alert that morning. Someone had used our joint visa at the Everglades Paradise Resort, a luxury hotel 2 hours north of Miami, in the middle of nowhere. The charge was for 2 nights, premium suite, champagne service. I'm Graham Parrish, 39 years old, former Army EOD specialist turned electrical contractor. After dodging roadside bombs in Middle East, I figured the biggest explosions in my life would involve faulty circuit breakers. Turns out I was dead wrong. Mr. Parrish, you still with us? My client, an overweight real estate developer named Henderson, waved his pudgy hand in front of my face. We were standing in the half-finished lobby of his new office complex, surrounded by exposed wiring and the smell of fresh drywall. Sorry, just checking something. I pocketed my phone and forced a smile. Like I was saying, rewiring this whole building is going to run you about $40,000. My brother John and I can have a crew here next Monday. Henderson nodded, but I wasn't really paying attention anymore. My mind was racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Beth had been acting strange for months. Secretive phone calls, new clothes, sudden interest in working out. I chalked it up to a midlife crisis. At 37, she was still gorgeous, still turned heads when we went out. Maybe she just needed to feel young again. But this credit card thing, that was different. That was evidence. I wrapped up with Henderson and drove back to Parrish Brothers Electrical, the company I'd built with my older brother John after getting out of the service. Our office sat in a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Pensacola, Florida, surrounded by palm trees and the constant humidity that made your shirt stick to your back within minutes of stepping outside. John was at his desk when I walked in, feet up, talking on his phone in that smooth voice that had always gotten him out of trouble. At 42, he still looked like the high school quarterback he'd been. Tall, broad shoulders, perfect teeth that he flashed at every woman within a 50-mile radius. We'd been partners for 8 years, ever since I'd gotten out of the Army. But sometimes I wondered if he saw me as an equal, or just the younger brother who handled the technical stuff while he charmed clients and closed deals. "Hey, Graham, perfect timing," John said, hanging up his phone. "That was the Marriott project. They want to move up the timeline by 2 weeks. Think we can handle it?" "Probably." I sat down at my desk across from his, trying to act normal while my world was falling apart. "Listen, I need to ask you something. You been in touch with Beth lately?" John's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Beth? No, why would I be? She's on that girls' trip, right? Miami or something?" "Yeah, Miami." I watched his face carefully. John had always been a good liar, but I'd learned to read people in the Army. Micro-expressions, body language, the little tells that separated truth from BS. "Funny thing, though, got a credit card alert today. Someone used our card at some fancy resort in the Everglades." "Probably just a mistake," John said, a little too quickly. "You know how those automated systems are? Could be a duplicate charge from her hotel in Miami." "Could be." I opened my laptop and pretended to check emails. "Hey, you mind if I take off early today? Want to surprise the girls when they get home from school?" "Sure, no problem. I'll handle things here." I gathered my stuff and headed for the door, but stopped when I saw John's desk calendar. There, in his handwriting, were the words, EP Resort, 2 nights, written in yesterday's date slot. Everglades Paradise Resort. My blood turned to ice water. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 10 minutes, staring at nothing, trying to process what I'd just seen. My brother, my business partner, the guy who'd been best man at my wedding, the same wedding where he'd given a toast about how Beth was the luckiest woman in the world to find a guy like me. My phone buzzed with another text from Beth. "Miss you, baby. Can't wait to tell you about all the spa treatments. Lisa says hi." I screenshot the message and opened Facebook. Took me about 30 seconds to find Lisa's profile. Her latest post from this morning showed her at a nail salon in Destin, Florida, not Miami. The timestamp showed she'd been there for the past 3 days. So much for girls' weekend. I drove home in a daze, muscle memory navigating the familiar streets, while my mind raced through 8 years of marriage. looking for signs I'd missed. Our house sat on 2 acres outside the city limits, a sprawling ranch-style place we'd bought when business started taking off. Beth had insisted on the big kitchen, the master suite with the garden tub, the 3-car garage for my tools, and John's classic Mustang that he stored there during hurricane season. John's Mustang. The car he babied more than most people loved their children. The car that was supposed to be in that garage right now, but wasn't. Our daughters, Beau and Bree, were in the kitchen doing homework when I walked in. 15 and 13 years old, respectively, they'd inherited their mother's blonde hair and blue eyes, but got my stubborn streak and sarcastic sense of humor. They were good kids, honor roll students, athletes. They deserved better than having their family blown apart by betrayal. "Dad, you're home early," Beau said, looking up from her algebra textbook. "Everything okay?" "Just wanted to spend some time with my favorite girls." I kissed the top of her head, then Bree's. "How was school?" "Boring," Bree said. "Mrs. Peterson assigned another stupid essay about summer vacation, like, we live in Florida. Every day is summer vacation." I laughed, despite everything. "What do you want for dinner? Mom's not back until tomorrow." "Pizza," they said in unison. While we waited for delivery, I made small talk with my daughters. But part of my mind was already planning. I needed proof. Real, undeniable evidence that would hold up in divorce court. I'd learned patience in the Army. Sometimes you had to watch a target for days before making your move. After the girls went to bed, I sat in my home office and started digging. Credit card statements, phone records, anything that might tell me how long this had been going on. What I found made my stomach turn. The Everglades Paradise Resort charge wasn't the first. There were 3 other hotel charges over the past 2 months, always on days when Beth claimed to be shopping or visiting her sister in Tallahassee. There were charges at expensive restaurants, a jewelry store, a lingerie boutique I'd never heard of. My phone rang, John's name on the caller ID. "Hey, brother." His voice was casual, friendly. "Just wanted to make sure everything was cool earlier. You seemed a little stressed." "Just tired," I said. "Long day." "Yeah, I hear you. Listen, I'm thinking of taking a few days off next week. Maybe drive down to the Keys, do some fishing. You mind holding down the fort? Next week?" I pretended to check my calendar. That's when Beth gets back from Miami. Silence on the other end. Just for a second, but long enough. "Oh, right, your wife's trip. How's that going?" "Great, according to her texts. She's having a wonderful time with the girls." "That's good. Beth deserves a break. She works so hard taking care of you and the kids." The way he said her name, Beth, with just a little too much familiarity, a little too much warmth, like he'd been practicing saying it in private. "John, can I ask you something?" "Sure, anything." "If you found out someone was betraying you, someone you trusted completely, what would you do?" Another pause. "That's a weird question, Graham. Why? Just hypothetical. Say your business partner was stealing from you, or your wife was cheating, or your brother was stabbing you in the back. What would be the right way to handle it?" I guess I'd want to be absolutely sure first. Then I'd confront them directly, give them a chance to explain. And if they lied to your face, then I'd make sure they never had the chance to hurt me again. "Interesting philosophy," I said. "I'll keep that in mind." After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about betrayal and revenge and the different ways a man could destroy the people who destroyed him. The next morning, I dropped the girls at school and drove to Everglades Paradise Resort. It was a 2-hour drive through increasingly desolate swampland, the kind of place where cell service was spotty and the nearest neighbor might be 10 miles away. Perfect for a secret rendezvous. The resort itself was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 20 luxury cabins scattered around a man-made lake, connected by wooden walkways that stretched out over the water. Spanish moss hung from ancient cypress trees, and somewhere in the distance I could hear the low bellow of an alligator. I parked in the visitor lot and walked into the main lodge, trying to look like a potential customer rather than a husband hunting for evidence of adultery. The desk clerk was a college-aged kid with sun-bleached hair and a bored expression. "Help you?" he asked, without looking up from his phone. "I'm thinking about booking a cabin for my wife and me," I said. "Anniversary weekend. Could I maybe take a look at one of your premium suites?" "Sure, no problem." He grabbed a key from the board behind him. "Follow me." The cabin he showed me was exactly what I'd expected. Rustic luxury, king-sized bed, hot tub on the deck overlooking the water. The kind of place that charged $500 a night for the privilege of pretending you were roughing it while enjoying room service and Egyptian cotton sheets. Beautiful spot, I said, taking pictures with my phone. Very private. That's what most of our guests like about it. Lots of couples come here to get away from everything, you know? No distractions. I bet you probably see the same faces pretty regularly. The kid nodded. Oh yeah, we've got regulars. There's this one couple. They've been coming here once a month for the past few months. Real nice people. Always tip well. My heart started pounding. Really? What do they look like? Well, I probably shouldn't. He glanced around, then leaned closer. The guy's tall, really good looking. Drives a classic Mustang. The woman's blonde, gorgeous. They always book the premium suite, always pay cash for extras. I pulled out my phone and showed him Beth's Facebook profile picture. This the woman? His eyes widened. Yeah, that's her. How did you? Then understanding dawned on his face. Oh, shit. You're the husband, aren't you? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I pulled out my wallet and handed him $200 cash. I need to know everything. When they were here, what they did, anything you remember. The kid pocketed the money quickly. They checked in Monday afternoon, left this morning. Same pattern as always. They barely leave the cabin, order room service, use the hot tub. The guy always brings expensive champagne. Dom Perignon. Did you see them leave? Yeah, around 10 a.m. They took separate cars, though, which was weird. Usually they arrived together in his Mustang. Separate cars. Which meant Beth drove her own vehicle here while telling me she was flying to Miami with her girlfriends. The lies were getting deeper. I thanked the kid and drove home, my mind working through possibilities. I had evidence of the affair, but I needed more. I needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal before I decided how to respond. That afternoon, I called my old Army buddy, Rick Chalmers. Rick had been my demolitions partner overseas, and after getting out, he'd started a private investigation business in Tampa. If anyone could help me gather the evidence I needed, it was Rick. Graham Parrish, you son of a bitch, Rick's gravelly voice boomed through the phone. How long's it been? Too long, brother. Listen, I need a favor. A big one. Name it. I explained the situation, keeping my voice level and professional despite the rage burning in my chest. Rick listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. Damn, Graham. I'm sorry, man. That's rough. I need surveillance photos, phone records if you can get them, anything that'll hold up in court, and I need to know how long this has been going on. I can do that. Give me a week. Maybe less. But, Graham, what are you planning to do with this information? I'm going to end it, I said. All of it. Just be careful, okay? Don't do anything stupid. These situations can get ugly fast. Don't worry about me, Rick. I'm not planning to do anything illegal. But when I'm done, they're going to wish they'd never been born. That evening, Beth called while I was helping Bree with her science project. Hi, baby. Her voice was bright, cheerful, completely normal. How are my girls? We're good, I said, putting the phone on speaker. How's Miami? Oh, it's wonderful. We spent the day at the beach, then had the most amazing dinner at this little Cuban place Lisa found. I wish you were here. Me too. When's your flight tomorrow? 2:30. I should be home by dinner time. Bew and Bree chatted with their mother for a few minutes, telling her about school and friends and the pizza we'd had for dinner. Normal family conversation, the kind we'd had thousands of times over the years, except now every word felt like poison. After the girls went to bed, I sat on the back deck with a beer, staring out at the pine trees and palmetto scrub that surrounded our property. In the distance, I could hear the highway, the occasional semi-truck downshifting as it hit the hill near the county line. My phone buzzed with a text from John. Hey, change of plans. Not going to the Keys after all. Something came up. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. No problem. See you Monday. But I wouldn't be seeing John on Monday. By Monday, everything would be different. Beth came home Friday evening with a perfect tan and a suitcase full of new clothes she claimed to have bought in Miami's South Beach district. She hugged the girls, kissed me like nothing had changed, and launched into an elaborate story about spa treatments and shopping expeditions and late-night conversations with her girlfriends. She was a good liar. I had to give her that. You look relaxed, I said, watching her unpack. The trip was good for you. It really was. Sometimes a girl just needs to get away from everything, you know? Clear her head, remember who she is outside of being a wife and mother. I'm sure John would understand that feeling too. She paused for just a fraction of a second while folding a new sundress. John? What does he have to do with anything? Nothing. Just thinking about how hard he's been working lately. Maybe he needs a vacation too. Maybe. She closed the suitcase and smiled at me. I missed you, Graham. All of you. That night she made love to me with an enthusiasm she hadn't shown in months. Afterwards, lying in the dark, listening to her breathe, I wondered if it was guilt or excitement that had rekindled her passion. Either way, it felt like betrayal. Saturday morning, Rick called while Beth was at the grocery store with the girls. I've got what you need, he said. And Graham, it's bad. Worse than you thought. How bad? The affair's been going on for 6 months. I've got photos, hotel records, even some audio from when they thought they were alone. Your brother's been using company funds to pay for their little getaways. My vision went red around the edges. Company funds? Looks like about $15,000 so far. Charged to miscellaneous business expenses, hotels, restaurants, jewelry. He's been stealing from you to finance his affair with your wife. Send me everything, I said. Email, overnight delivery, whatever. I want it all. Graham, promise me you're not going to do anything crazy. Define crazy. You know what I mean? These people aren't worth going to prison over. Don't worry, Rick. I'm not going to prison, but they're going to pay for what they've done. The evidence arrived Sunday afternoon via overnight courier. Photos of Beth and John together at 3 different hotels over the past 6 months. Audio recordings of them planning their trips. Talking about me like I was some kind of obstacle to be managed. Financial records showing exactly how John had been embezzling from our business to fund their affair. But the worst part was the last audio file. Beth's voice clear as day. I don't love him anymore, John. I haven't for years. I'm only staying for the girls. And John's response. After we get control of the business, we won't need him anymore. We can have everything we want. I sat in my office for an hour after listening to that, staring at the wall, feeling something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to destroy me completely. My phone rang. John's name on the caller ID. Hey, brother, you busy tomorrow? Want to grab lunch? Talk about some new projects? Sure, I said, my voice perfectly calm. How about that place on Palafox Street? Noon? Perfect. See you then. But I had no intention of having lunch with John. Instead, I spent Sunday night preparing for war. Monday morning, I kissed Beth goodbye like always, told her I'd be home for dinner, and drove to the office. John was already there, feet up on his desk, scrolling through his phone with that easy smile that had always made people trust him. Morning, Graham. Ready for lunch later? About that, I said, settling into my chair. Change of plans. I want to show you something first. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him. The first photo filled the screen. John and Beth entering the Everglades Paradise Resort, his arm around her waist, both of them laughing. John's face went pale. Graham, I can explain. Explain what? I clicked to the next photo. John and Beth on the cabin deck sharing champagne. Explain how you've been screwing my wife for 6 months. Explain how you've been stealing from our business to pay for it. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you and my wife have been planning to take over Parrish Brothers Electrical and cut me out completely. I think you've been using company funds to finance your little love affair. And I think you've both been lying to my face for months. John stood up slowly, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a dangerous animal. Look, things got complicated. Beth and I, it just happened. We never meant for it to go this far. But it did go that far, didn't it? 6 months, John. 6 months of betrayal? What do you want, Graham? You want me to apologize? Fine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry it happened this way, but Beth doesn't love you anymore. She hasn't for years. I stood up too, and John took a step back. At 6'2" and 200 pounds of military-trained muscle, I had 4 inches and 30 pounds on my older brother. For the first time in our lives, he looked afraid of me. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice deadly calm. You're going to sign over your half of the business to me. You're going to pay back every penny you stole, and you're going to disappear from my life forever. And if I don't? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Then I send copies of everything I have to the IRS, the state attorney's office, and every client we've ever worked with. I also send them to Beth's father, who, as you know, is a deacon at First Baptist and has very strong opinions about adultery. John's face went from pale to gray. You wouldn't try me. We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, John sat back down. What about Beth? Beth's my problem, not yours. You just worry about getting out of my life in one piece. That afternoon, John signed the papers transferring his ownership stake to me. He also signed a promissory note for the $15,000 he'd stolen, plus interest. By 5 p.m., Parrish Brothers Electrical was mine alone. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. That evening, I cooked dinner for my family like always. Beth asked about my day, and I told her it had been productive. The girls talked about school and friends and weekend plans, normal family conversation, except nothing was normal anymore. After the girls went to bed, I poured Beth a glass of wine and sat down across from her at the kitchen table. "We need to talk," I said. Something in my tone must have warned her, because her smile faltered. "About what?" I placed a manila envelope on the table between us. "About your trip to Miami, or should I say, your trip to the Everglades Paradise Resort with my brother." Beth's face went white. "Graham, Don't." I held up a hand. "Don't insult my intelligence with more lies. I know everything. The hotels, the stolen money, the 6 months of planning behind my back, I know all of it." She stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "What do you want?" "I want a divorce, uncontested 50-50 custody of the girls, and you get to keep your dignity by not having these photos sent to everyone we know. And if I fight you?" I opened the envelope and spread the photos across the table. Beth flinched like I'd slapped her. "Then I destroy you," I said simply. "Your reputation, your relationship with the girls, your standing in the community, everything." Beth picked up one of the photos with shaking hands. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to make sure you can't hurt me anymore." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I never meant for it to happen this way, Graham. I felt so trapped, so invisible. John made me feel alive again." "John made you feel like a hooker," I said. "There's a difference." She flinched again. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been asking for a divorce before you started screwing my brother. Fair would have been not stealing from our business to finance your affair. Fair would have been not lying to our daughters' faces while you were planning to destroy their family." Beth wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What happens now?" "Now you pack a bag and go stay with your sister until we can work out the details. The girls can know that we're separating, but they don't need to know why unless you force my hand." "Graham, please, can't we try to work this out? Go to counseling or something?" I looked at the woman I'd loved for 8 years, the mother of my children, the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world, and I felt nothing but cold contempt. "You made your choice, Beth. Now you get to live with it." The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and carefully managed conversations with Beau and Bree about why Mommy was staying at Aunt Sarah's house for a while. I told them their mother and I were having some problems and needed time to work things out, which was technically true even if it was incomplete. Both girls took it better than I'd expected. Beau, at 15, was old enough to sense that something serious was happening, but she didn't push for details. Bree, 13 and more emotional, cried a few times and asked if it was her fault. I assured her it wasn't, that sometimes adults just grew apart and that both their parents loved them very much. John had disappeared completely after signing over the business. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to Jacksonville and was working for another electrical contractor. Good. The farther away he stayed, the better for everyone. But not everyone in my life was handling the situation with understanding. Rick Chalmers, my best friend since high school and the guy who had introduced me to Beth in the first place, showed up at my office on a Thursday afternoon, looking uncomfortable. "We need to talk," he said, settling his bulk into the chair across from my desk. At 38, Rick had put on weight since our Army days, but he was still solid muscle under the beer gut. He worked construction now, mostly commercial projects, and we'd stayed close over the years. "What's on your mind?" I asked, though I had a feeling I knew where this was going. "Beth called me," he said. "She's pretty upset about how you're handling the divorce." I leaned back in my chair. "Is she now? And what exactly did she tell you?" "She said you're being vindictive, that you won't even consider counseling, that you're threatening to destroy her reputation if she doesn't give you everything you want." "Anything else?" Rick shifted uncomfortably. "She said the affair with John was a mistake, that it's over, and she wants to try to save the marriage." I stared at my oldest friend for a long moment. "Rick, how long have we known each other?" "Since we were kids. 25 years, maybe more. And in all that time, have I ever lied to you about anything important?" "No, but..." Have I ever been vindictive or cruel without good reason? Graham, I'm not saying you don't have a right to be angry. Answer the question, Rick. Have I ever been the kind of man who would destroy someone just for the fun of it? Rick sighed. No, you haven't. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder containing some of the photos Rick's PI friend had taken. I slid it across the desk. Take a look at those and tell me I'm being vindictive. Rick opened the folder reluctantly. His expression darkened as he flipped through the images. Beth and John at various hotels, intimate moments captured from a distance, financial records showing the embezzled funds. Jesus, Graham, I had no idea it was this bad. 6 months, Rick. 6 months of lies, theft, and planning to cut me out of my own business. And now she wants to work things out because she got caught. Rick closed the folder and pushed it back across the desk. I'm sorry, man. I should have trusted your judgment. Yes, you should have. But Beth can be very persuasive when she wants to be. She's probably told you some sob story about how I was neglecting her, how John was just a shoulder to cry on, how one thing led to another. Something like that, yeah? All bees. She made a choice, Rick. Multiple choices over 6 months. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Rick nodded slowly. What do you need from me? I need you to stay out of it. Don't take her calls, don't play mediator, don't try to fix things. This marriage is over, and the sooner everyone accepts that, the better. You got it, brother. But Rick wasn't the only one who'd been influenced by Beth's version of events. Over the next few days, I discovered that she'd been busy playing the victim to anyone who would listen. Mutual friends started avoiding me or giving me cold looks at the grocery store. Beth's family, who'd always treated me like a son, suddenly stopped returning my calls. The worst part was when Bew came home from school upset because some of her friends had been asking questions about the divorce. Apparently, word was spreading through the community that I was being unreasonable and cruel to her mother. Dad, is it true you won't even try to work things out with Mom? Bew asked over dinner Friday night. I looked at my daughter, so young, so hopeful that her parents might somehow find their way back to each other, and felt my heart break a little. Sometimes, sweetheart, people hurt each other so badly that there's no way to fix it, I said carefully. Your mom and we've reached that point. But people make mistakes, Bree chimed in. Mrs. Rodriguez in Sunday school says forgiveness is the most important thing. Mrs. Rodriguez is right about forgiveness being important, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean you have to put yourself in a position to be hurt again. It was a hard conversation, but necessary. I could see the wheels turning in both girls' heads, trying to understand adult complexities with teenage logic. They'd figure it out eventually, probably sooner than I wanted them to. That weekend, things got worse. I was at Home Depot buying supplies for a job when I ran into Dave Morrison and Pete Williams, 2 guys I'd known since high school. We'd never been close friends, but we'd always been cordial, the kind of acquaintances who'd chat for a few minutes if we ran into each other. Graham, Dave said, his voice cool. Heard about you and Beth. Word travels fast in a small town, I replied, continuing to load pipe fittings into my cart. She's a good woman, Pete added. Shame you can't find a way to work things out. I stopped loading my cart and looked at both men. Is that what she told you? That I'm not willing to work things out? She said you found out about some mistake she made, and now you're trying to take her for everything she's worth, Dave said. That's pretty cold, man. A mistake. I nodded slowly. Is that what we're calling a 6-month affair with my business partner now? A mistake? Both men looked uncomfortable, but Dave pressed on. Look, I'm not saying what she did was right, but people make bad choices when they're unhappy. Maybe if you'd been a better husband. He didn't get to finish that sentence because I grabbed him by the shirt and slammed him against the nearest shelf, sending packages of screws and bolts cascading to the floor. Let me explain something to you, Dave, I said, my voice deadly quiet. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what she did, how she did it, or why she did it. So I suggest you keep your opinions about my marriage to yourself. Pete stepped forward like he might intervene, but something in my expression made him think better of it. I learned a lot about intimidation in the Army, and some lessons you never forget. I released Dave and stepped back. Have a nice day, gentlemen. As I walked away, I heard Dave muttering something about me being unhinged. But I didn't care. Word would spread about the confrontation, and that was fine with me. Maybe it would make other people think twice before offering their uninformed opinions about my personal life. But I was beginning to realize that Beth's campaign to paint herself as the victim was more effective than I'd anticipated. She was turning people against me, making me look like the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. That couldn't be allowed to continue. The breaking point came 3 weeks later at Bree's soccer game. I was sitting in the bleachers, cheering for my daughter and trying to ignore the whispered conversations and pointed stares from other parents, when Beth showed up with John. They sat on the opposite side of the field, but their presence was like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. John had his arm around Beth's shoulders in a gesture that was clearly meant to be seen to make a statement. They were together now, publicly, and they didn't care who knew it. But what really set me off was when I saw Bu's reaction. She was warming up with her team when she spotted her mother and uncle together. The confusion and hurt that flashed across her 15-year-old face was like a knife to my heart. After the game, which we won 3, one thanks to 2 goals from Bree, I walked over to where Beth and John were standing near the parking lot. "We need to talk," I said to Beth, ignoring John completely. "There's nothing to talk about," she replied, but I could see nervousness in her eyes. "There's plenty to talk about, starting with why you brought him to our daughter's soccer game." John stepped forward, puffing out his chest like a peacock. "I have every right to be here, Graham. These girls are my nieces." I looked at him for the first time since he'd arrived. "You lost the right to call them your nieces when you started screwing their mother." Several parents were close enough to hear that, and I saw heads turn in our direction. Good. Let them hear the truth for once. "You're making a scene," Beth hissed. "The girls are watching." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to flaunt your affair at a middle school soccer game." "It's not an affair anymore," John said. "Beth and I are together now, legitimately." "Legitimately?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "There's nothing legitimate about what you two did. You're built on lies, theft, and betrayal. That's not a foundation, that's quicksand." Beth grabbed John's arm. "Let's just go." But John wasn't done posturing. "You know what, Graham? Maybe it's time someone told you the truth. Beth was miserable with you for years. I just gave her what you couldn't. Attention, affection, passion. I made her feel like a woman again instead of just a housekeeper and babysitter." The red mist descended over my vision. Before I knew what I was doing, I'd grabbed John by the throat and lifted him off his feet. At 200 pounds of military-trained muscle, I was stronger than I looked, and John was softer than he pretended to be. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, my voice so quiet that only he and Beth could hear it. "If you ever disrespect me in front of my daughters again, I will end you. Not legally, not financially, physically. Do you understand me?" John's face was turning purple, but he managed to nod. I released him and he stumbled backward, gasping and rubbing his throat. "Graham!" Beth's voice was shrill with panic. "You can't just—" "I can and I will," I said, turning to face her. "You want to be with him? Fine. But you will not humiliate me in front of our children. You will not bring your boyfriend to family events, and you will not turn my daughters against me with your lies." "I haven't told them anything." Bu asked me last week if it was true that I was being mean to you. Where do you think she heard that?" Beth's face flushed red. "I never said you were being mean." "What did you say, Beth?" "Exactly." She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I might have mentioned that you were being inflexible about counseling?" "Inflexible," I nodded. "Right. And I'm sure you explained why I'm being inflexible, didn't you? You told them about the 6 months of lies, the stolen money, the planning to destroy their father? They don't need to know those details. No, they don't. But they also don't need to think their father is the villain in this story. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop poisoning them against me. You're going to stop playing the victim to our friends and neighbors. And you're going to keep your boyfriend away from family events." "And if I don't?" I smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever worn. "Then I stop being the nice guy. I stop protecting your reputation. I stop caring about our daughter's feelings. And I burn your world to the ground." John had recovered enough to speak. "You can't threaten us like this, Graham. There are laws. There are also newspapers," I said, "and social media, and church bulletin boards. How do you think the good people of Pensacola would react to seeing photos of you two in various hotel rooms over the past 6 months? How do you think your new employer in Jacksonville would feel about hiring someone who embezzles from family businesses?" John's face went pale again. "You wouldn't. try me. That night, after putting the girls to bed, I sat on my back deck with a beer and thought about how far I'd fallen. 6 months ago, I'd been a happily married man with a successful business and a bright future. Now I was threatening people in soccer field parking lots and contemplating public humiliation campaigns. But sometimes when people push you far enough, you have to push back harder. Beth and John had started this war when they decided to betray me. I was just finishing it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "You're right. It's not." But I had no idea how right I was or how much worse things were about to get. The anonymous threatening texts started coming daily after that. Never anything specific enough to take to the police, just vague warnings about consequences and making me pay. I had no proof they were from John, but the timing was suspicious. More concerning was the effect the ongoing drama was having on Beau and Bree. Both girls were becoming withdrawn, their grades slipping, their normal teenage cheerfulness replaced by a worried maturity that broke my heart. They were caught in the middle of an adult war they didn't understand, and it was destroying their childhood innocence. Something had to give. And I decided it was going to be Beth and John's ability to control the narrative. I called Rick Chalmers and asked him to meet me for lunch at a quiet restaurant outside town. When he arrived, I could see the concern in his eyes. "You look like hell, Graham." "I feel like hell." But I'm done being the victim in this situation." I slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything's on there. Photos, audio recordings, financial records, hotel receipts, 6 months of documentation proving exactly what they did and how they did it." Rick picked up the drive but didn't pocket it. "What do you want me to do with this?" "I want you to upload it to every social media platform you can think of. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever the kids are using these days. I want the whole world to see what Beth and John really are." Graham, think about this. Once you go nuclear, there's no taking it back. Your daughters are going to see this stuff eventually. My daughters are already suffering because of their mother's lies. At least this way, they'll know the truth. Rick studied my face for a long moment. "This isn't you, man. You're not vindictive. You're not cruel. 6 months ago, I wasn't divorced either. People change, Rick. Circumstances change them. What about forgiveness? What about taking the high road?" I laughed bitterly. The high road is for people who haven't been betrayed by everyone they trusted. Beth made her choice when she decided to destroy our marriage. John made his choice when he decided to steal from our business. Now I'm making mine. Rick pocketed the flash drive reluctantly. "If I do this, our friendship might not survive it. Beth's going to know it came from you, and she's going to know I helped. Our friendship already changed the day you took her side without hearing mine. This just makes it official." That was harsh, but it was also true. Rick had been my best friend for 25 years, but he'd been willing to believe Beth's version of events without even asking for my side of the story. That kind of betrayal cut almost as deep as what my wife and brother had done. Rick left without saying goodbye, and I sat in the restaurant for another hour, drinking coffee and thinking about the point of no return. Once those photos and recordings went public, there would be no going back to any kind of normal relationship with Beth. Our divorce would become a public spectacle, our daughters would be subjected to gossip and speculation, and I would be seen as either a victim or a vindictive ex-husband, depending on who was doing the judging. But I was tired of being the reasonable one, tired of protecting people who had tried to destroy me, tired of watching my daughters suffer because of their mother's lies and manipulations. My phone rang, Beth's name on the caller ID. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "Face to face, tonight." "About what?" "About ending this war before it destroys all of us?" I almost laughed. Now she wanted to end the war after months of escalation and public humiliation. "Fine, your sister's house, 8 p.m. And Beth? Come alone. John has a right to be there. John has no rights where I'm concerned. You want to talk? We talk alone. Otherwise, this conversation is over." She agreed reluctantly, and I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for what I expected to be our final confrontation. At 8 p.m. sharp, I pulled into the driveway of Beth's sister Sarah's house in a quiet subdivision on the east side of town. Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she'd made herself scarce for our conversation. Smart woman. Beth answered the door looking tired and older than her 37 years. The stress of the past few weeks had taken a toll on her, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the old affection I'd once had for this woman. Then I remembered the audio recording of her telling John she hadn't loved me for years, and the feeling passed. "Thank you for coming," she said, leading me into the living room. "Let's get this over with. What do you want, Beth?" She sat on the couch across from me, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl. "I want us to find a way to coexist peacefully, for the girl's sake. Peaceful coexistence would have been possible 6 months ago, before you started screwing my brother and stealing from our business." She flinched at the crude language, but pressed on. "I know what we did was wrong. I know we hurt you. But continuing this war isn't going to change what happened. It's only going to hurt Beau and Bree. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy their family. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, Graham. It just evolved. John and I, we connected on an emotional level first. The physical part came later. Spare me the romantic BS, Beth. You had an affair. Multiple affairs, actually, since this went on for 6 months. You lied to me, you lied to our daughters, and you helped John steal from our business. Those are facts, not emotions." She was crying now, but I felt nothing. The tears that might have moved me 6 months ago were just manipulation tactics now. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "What will it take to end this?" "I want you to stop lying to our daughters about why our marriage ended. I want you to stop playing the victim to our friends and neighbors. And I want you to disappear from my life completely except for necessary communications about the girls. And John. John is dead to me. If I never see him again, it'll be too soon." Beth wiped her eyes with the tissue. "We're planning to get married, Graham, after the divorce is final." "Congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy together, right up until he cheats on you too." "He won't." "He will. Men who cheat with you will cheat on you. It's just a matter of time." She looked like I'd slapped her, but I wasn't done. "You know what the really sad part is, Beth? I would have given you a divorce if you'd just asked for one. If you'd been honest about being unhappy, about wanting something different, I would have worked with you to end things amicably. We could have co-parented successfully, remained friends even. But you chose deception and betrayal instead. You chose to humiliate me and steal from me. And now you get to live with the consequences." "So what happens now?" I stood up to leave. "Now you sign the divorce papers without contest, you accept the custody arrangement we've already agreed on, and you pray that I don't decide to make your life any more difficult than it already is." "And if I don't," I smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever worn, "then you find out what I'm really capable of when people push me too far." I left her sitting in her sister's living room, crying into her tissues, and drove home to my daughters. Whatever happened next, at least I'd tried to give her a chance to end things quietly. But I had a feeling she wouldn't take it. I was right. Beth didn't take the offer. Instead, she hired a shark of a divorce attorney and filed a motion claiming I was mentally unstable and potentially dangerous to our daughters. She cited the incident at the soccer field where I'd grabbed John's throat, along with testimony from several witnesses who claimed I'd been erratic and threatening in recent weeks. The motion requested supervised visitation only, with a court-appointed psychologist evaluating my fitness as a parent. I read the legal papers in my kitchen while Beau and Bree ate breakfast before school and felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Beth had just crossed the last line that mattered to me. She was trying to take my daughters away. The gloves were officially off. After dropping the girls at school, I drove to Rick Chalmers' construction office. He was in his trailer, reviewing blueprints for a new shopping center, when I walked in without knocking. "Upload it," I said without preamble. "All of it. Today." Rick looked up from his plans. "Graham, are you sure?" I threw Beth's legal motion on his desk. "She's trying to take my kids away from me, claiming I'm mentally unstable and dangerous. After everything she's done, she has the balls to question my fitness as a father." Rick read through the papers, his expression growing darker with each page. Jesus Christ, she's really going for the throat. My daughters are the only good thing left in my life, Rick. I will not let her take them from me. "Okay." Rick pulled out his laptop and the flash drive I'd given him. "But once I do this, there's no going back. This is going to explode like a nuclear bomb." "Good. Let it explode. Let the whole world see what Beth and John really are." It took Rick about an hour to create accounts on various social media platforms and upload the evidence. Photos of Beth and John at multiple hotels over 6 months. Audio recordings of them planning their affair and talking about destroying me financially. Financial records showing the embezzled funds, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, jewelry store purchases, all paid for with money stolen from Parrish Brothers Electrical. But the piece de resistance was a video Rick had managed to obtain from a security camera at one of the hotels. 30 seconds of Beth and John in a passionate embrace outside their room, completely oblivious to being recorded. The timestamp showed it was taken just 2 days before Beth had come home from her supposed girls' weekend in Miami. Rick posted everything with a simple caption: "The truth about adultery, embezzlement, and betrayal. When people show you who they really are, believe them." Within an hour, the posts had been shared dozens of times. Within 4 hours, hundreds. By the end of the day, the story had gone viral throughout Pensacola and the surrounding areas. My phone started ringing around noon and didn't stop. Friends, acquaintances, business associates, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted to know if the posts were real, if I was okay, if there was anything they could do to help. The answer to the first question was yes, they were absolutely real. The answer to the second was that I was better than I'd been in months. As for the third, I told everyone the same thing. Just remember this the next time someone tries to tell you I was the villain in this story. But the real vindication came from unexpected sources. Dave Morrison, the guy who'd confronted me at Home Depot about being a bad husband, called to apologize. Pete Williams sent a text saying he'd been wrong to judge me without knowing the facts. Even some of Beth's friends reached out to express their shock and support. The tide of public opinion was turning, and it was turning hard against Beth and John. That evening, as I was helping Bree with her homework, my phone rang, Beth's number. "You bastard," she said without preamble. "How could you do this to me? To us? I didn't do anything to you, Beth. I just showed the world what you did to me. My reputation is ruined. John lost his job. People are calling us horrible names." "Good. Maybe now you understand how it feels to be humiliated and betrayed. The girls are going to see this. Their friends, their teachers, everyone at school." "Yes, they are. And they're going to learn that their father isn't the monster you tried to make him out to be." Beth was crying now, but these weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and humiliation. "I'll never forgive you for this, Graham. Never. I don't want your forgiveness, Beth. I want you to leave me and my daughters alone." "Our daughters." "My daughters. You lost the right to claim them when you tried to have me declared an unfit parent." I hung up on her and turned back to Bree's math homework, but my hands were shaking slightly. I'd just destroyed the mother of my children in the most public way possible. It felt like justice, but it also felt like crossing a line I could never uncross. 20 minutes later, Bew came into the kitchen looking upset. "Dad, some of my friends are sending me links to stuff online about you and Mom." My heart sank. "What kind of stuff?" "Pictures and recordings, stuff about Mom and Uncle John." She paused, struggling with words too adult for her 15-year-old vocabulary. "Is it true?" I looked at my daughter. My beautiful, innocent daughter who was being forced to confront the ugly realities of adult betrayal, and felt my heart break all over again. "Yes, sweetheart, it's true." "So that's why you and Mom are getting divorced? Because she was with Uncle John?" "That's part of it, yes." Bew nodded slowly, processing information that no teenager should have to process. "Are you okay, Dad?" The question caught me off guard. Here was my 15-year-old daughter, dealing with the public humiliation of her family's private tragedy, and she was asking if I was okay. "I'm okay, baby girl. Are you okay?" "I think so. I mean, I'm sad about you and Mom, but I'm not surprised. She's been acting weird for months, and Uncle John..." She shrugged. "I never really liked him anyway. He was always trying too hard, you know." Kids see more than adults give them credit for. Bew had sensed something was wrong long before I'd figured it out. "What about Bree? How's she handling this?" "She's upset, but she's tough. We both are. We get that from you." I hugged my daughter tighter than I had in months, grateful beyond words for her strength and maturity. "I love you, Bew. You and your sister are the most important things in my world." "We love you too, Dad. And for what it's worth, I think Mom got what she deserved." Out of the mouths of babes. The fallout from the viral posts was swift and devastating for Beth and John. Within 48 hours, John had been fired from his new job in Jacksonville when the photos and embezzlement evidence reached his employer. Beth was asked to step down from her volunteer position at the girls' school and quietly removed from the church committee she'd served on for years. But the most satisfying consequence was the collapse of Beth's legal strategy. Her attorney withdrew the motion claiming I was mentally unstable, after reviewing the evidence of her affair and the embezzlement. It's hard to claim someone is unfit to parent when you're the one who committed adultery and helped steal money from the family business. The divorce proceedings, which had been contentious and expensive, suddenly became very simple. Beth agreed to an uncontested divorce with 50-50 custody, no alimony, and a property settlement that heavily favored me. Her attorney advised her that fighting would only result in more public humiliation and potentially criminal charges for the embezzlement. John, meanwhile, had disappeared entirely. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd left Florida altogether, possibly heading to Texas or Arizona, where he had distant relatives. Good riddance. But the victory felt hollow. Yes, I'd won the war, but at what cost? My daughters were dealing with the public humiliation of their family's private tragedy. My marriage was over. My relationship with my brother was destroyed forever, and I'd become someone I didn't entirely recognize. Vindictive, calculating, ruthless. 3 months after the viral posts, I was sitting in my office reviewing contracts when Mary, our CFO, knocked on my door. "Graham, there's someone here to see you." "Who is it?" "Rick Chalmers. He says it's important." I hadn't spoken to Rick since the day he'd uploaded the evidence. Our friendship, like so many other relationships in my life, had been a casualty of the war with Beth and John. Rick walked into my office looking older than his 38 years. The stress of the past few months had taken a toll on him, too. "We need to talk," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "About what?" "About what you've become. About what this whole thing has done to you." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm fine, Rick." "No, you're not. You're angry and bitter and isolated. You've pushed away everyone who cared about you except your daughters." "I pushed away people who betrayed me or chose to believe lies about me. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, you've become exactly the kind of man Beth claimed you were. Vindictive, controlling, dangerous." That stung, because there was some truth to it. "What do you want, Rick?" "I want my friend back. The Graham Parrish I knew before all this started. The guy who was decent and forgiving and didn't destroy people just because he could. That guy got screwed over by his wife and brother. That guy was naive and trusting and got played for a fool." "Maybe, but that guy was also happy. He had a family, friends, a life worth living. What do you have now?" I gestured around my office. "I have my business. I have my daughters half the time. I have my self-respect." "You have your revenge. But revenge isn't the same thing as justice, and it's sure as hell not the same thing as happiness." Rick stood up to leave. "Beth and John were wrong to do what they did. But you were wrong too, Graham. Wrong to go nuclear. Wrong to destroy them so completely. Wrong to turn your daughter's private pain into public entertainment. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Keep telling yourself that if it helps you sleep at night. But we both know the truth. You became the monster they said you were." After Rick left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about monsters and victims and the thin line between justice and revenge. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd become something I didn't like in my quest to punish the people who'd betrayed me. But as I drove home that evening to make dinner for Beau and Bree, I couldn't bring myself to regret what I'd done. Beth and John had made their choices. I'd made mine. And if becoming a monster was the price of protecting my daughters and my dignity, then so be it. Some wars are worth winning, no matter what they cost you. That night, as I tucked Bree into bed, she asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Dad, do you think you and Mom will ever be friends again?" I looked at my 13-year-old daughter, so hopeful that the adults in her life might somehow find their way back to civility, and felt my heart break one more time. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday when all the hurt has had time to heal." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. There would be no healing from this, no eventual friendship, no happy co-parenting relationship. I'd made sure of that when I chose to destroy Beth and John so completely. The war was over, and I'd won. But victory had come at a price I was only beginning to understand. 6 months later, I received an invitation to Beau's high school graduation. Beth would be there, of course, along with her family and whatever remained of her social circle. It would be the first time we'd been in the same room since the divorce was finalized. I looked at the invitation for a long time, thinking about forgiveness and redemption and whether it was possible to find your way back from the kind of destruction I'd unleashed. Then I put the invitation on my refrigerator next to Bree's latest report card and Beau's acceptance letter to the University of Florida. My daughters were thriving despite everything that had happened. They were strong, resilient, and wise beyond their years. They'd survived their parents' war and emerged stronger for it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was victory enough for any man. I never did find out if Rick was right about me becoming a monster. But I knew one thing for certain. I was a monster who loved his daughters more than life itself, and I'd do it all again to protect them. Some prices are worth paying, some wars are worth winning, and sometimes the only way to save what matters most is to destroy everything else.